Yo, so what's up, everybody? Saba here. Today's topic isn't more so about Warrior Z. That video is coming out soon enough, and I do have a lot of problems with that low tier scum, but we're not really talking about him right now. So you could be asking, why am I uploading so many videos in the middle of fucking September? In the middle of fucking September, there is a lot of content to go off, and I actually do have a lot of free time. I think now that I have more free time, I can upload more consistent commentary videos because I did promise during the summer I would have a lot more commentary videos to get off. But it depends the content of those specific things. The specific content of the debating community is really attracting. It's not just about what happened to the specific debates, because there can be horrible debates, like say for example the fiction community. I watched Vert say, "Oh yeah, can you prove that a modal like argument for God?" There's no way you just said, "Oh yeah, show the scan, bro." What do you mean by prove it? The argument's right there. The argument is the evidence. What do you mean, bro? That's the substantia for the proposition. There's no way that several of these low tiers, from the fiction community, actually engage in philosophical debates. An example I would like to go over is probably Careless. Careless is actually undeniably fucking garbage, and a lot of people fail to realize that, specifically the Infinity Syndicate, because he's a student of Infinity, which is not a good thing, even in retrospect, considering he lost to Gyro. Even Judgment was granted by Poochie. And Infinity also lost to Evil Destiny not that long ago. Eric had way better substance, and just in general, Infinity fell off. It's kind of bad, and this dude was glazed back in 24, but now the Infinity hype is dying. So mainly speaking, these are examples, but what is the substance, the quality of my substance? What is the quality of it? What is the measurement of goodness within it? How valid is it? Well, the substance I'm using for today's video would more so be I don't know, a critique or just an internal critique about fiction debaters and attempting to do engagement or just engage within philosophical propositions in question, like metaphysical propositions, epistemic propositions, nomological propositions. You get the gist. You know, like or just in general, theological propositions, or just existential theological propositions, which would actually fall into the category of metaphysical propositions. There's just so much to go off the fact about the fiction community. There's people like Braley, Careless, Kuro. I've had my experiences with Kuro, but that nigga's fucking traumatizing me every time I ask for a debate. He's like, "Nope, I'm not debating you again." Kuro, he's not good. He's lost to Rizhan, and mainly speaking, I have my problems with people specifically like that, and it's not on a level of hatred. I don't hate the guys, but it's just I just think they should actually take their time to actually learn these terms instead of blatantly or just learn how to properly debate the propositions instead of saying goofy shit when an argument is provided. Okay, can you prove that? Essentially they just go circular. There's no actual progression within the dialectic. So there's just several shit wrong with the. There's just several things wrong with the fiction community, and in general, you can point it out, is that their lack of ability to track, their lack of ability to actually sustain actual knowledge. An example of this would actually be Warrior Z. Surprisingly enough, there's a solo video coming out on him. Stay tuned for that. But what I mean by that specifically is just, well, the example I'm using is Warrior thinks only definitions from a dictionary would count as an analytical truth. Analytical truths are true by definition. So if I can sit here and pick a consistent analytical, or just something which the etymology allows for me to actually have applicability or utility for, say for example, where this word comes from, which establishes some form of contextual structure of meaning. An example would be the word pedophile. Pedophile comes from catamites, specifically people who are with young males, and particularly within the New Testament of Greek, and where it was like written into Greek and everything, where catamites were mentioned. There's like a huge mistranslation at that point. People think it's for gay men. It's specifically for pedophilic men. It's an inclusive towards like minors and minors being gay. Like, but like that's the Bible right there. I'm not here to talk about the Bible. It's just like specifically things about analytical truths. So analytical truths are usually epistemological predicates or things which we use to actually have some form of epistemological framework to constitute our knowledge. Epistemological frameworks are a way to know or constitute or just allow for an enforcement of our knowledge. Not necessarily like say prescriptive, but it can be descriptive as well. Like say for example the law of non-contradiction. I actually hold that it's descriptive. I don't actually think it's prescriptive. Like objectively prescriptive, like in some form of ontological way, like concretely. That would be some form of logical realistic stance or an inclusive proposition which actually adheres to the stance. But my main thing would be more so is that these terms are more so from our epistemology and our way to communicate upon propositions. It's how we know our terms in English and which way we use it for it. Like language gives us some form of context and just some form in general of, well, like origin of words, or just for us to dub something analytically true by definition. Like we would have some form of epistemic necessity to actually epistemically access claims. Epistemically, more so, just ties into the knowledgeable things factor in the JTB model. There's things like the Gettier problem, and more so, I can see where that comes from, but I kind of think the Gettier problem has its own problems as well. It doesn't really attack anything within epistemology or the JTB model, but anyways, I'm not here to talk about models about epistemology. It's like examples of the fiction community. Warrior Z thinks it's only limited to dictionaries, or dictionaries allow for us to do that. No, because there's things called colloquial definitions. Colloquial definitions can be consistent definitions with etymology, but still be slightly different syntactically, which means we would just have distinct sets of semantics, which therefore allow for different implications or distinct implications within semantics. And there's nothing wrong with that, just as long as it has the symmetrical point of etymology. Otherwise, then it's not that word, because that creates analytical distinctions from where it comes from in the origin. Therefore, that doesn't allow for it to be the same word or necessarily originate to actually have similarities with it. So it wouldn't be even synonymous in that case. But the word has consistency, therefore how it would have to be like synonymous. Like that's like the necessity of that. That's like the epistemic necessity for us to know that way. That's like the accessibility towards that. Like restricting that is a limiting predicate, and that wouldn't necessarily be like something like that. So like that's a huge example in which kind of counters Warrior's belief, or just like the proposition he holds to. Like I kind of believe his knowledge on that is complete dog shit. Like I only have the dude at like a low tier 4, like low tier 4, which is pretty bad in my opinion. I can like put him at tier 5, but I feel like he's above certain people like Trick, who I have at tier 5. Like I don't think Trick's actually decent. I'm not gonna lie. But a lot of people from this community are severely bad, including people who do debate philosophy, but you know, specifically more with like Warrior Z, that example. Things like infinity again, yeah. Infinity, God is a set of all contingent things, retard. Even if he was using that as an argument and he was somehow using a pantheistic way of argument or arguing, that's a pantheistic stance to hold to. And he doesn't know like the whole context behind it. Like the whole context actually originates from the divinity debate. I did watch that, by the way, and I think divinity slapped both times, but Infinity, I actually debated Infinity once, and the dude muted me for 6 days and kicked the recording bot. He told me there's no recording, and this was on my other account, which is currently suspended until 2027, because Discord's like shit Discord moderation. But that's not the point I'm talking about. Like, it's just like he was debating ethical egoism. Some of the shit he said is completely retarded. He said that abortion is independent of reason in terms of identity. even if we do accept that ontologically speaking concretely, there's still ways we can reason for that. It doesn't mean it's independent reason. Reason is not concrete things. It's something we use as conceptual frameworks or just conceptual formats for us to index something. So when you say something like reasoning, that would be our way of justifying for something in our fortitude. So it would be more so having data and then adding more so metadata to it. That's like a meta descriptor. So you can actually classify justification as like more so like meta descriptors if there is the qualifying conditions for it, which there is in some cases, but not all cases, which just kind of restricts the whole, allowance for all cases. But yeah, that doesn't mean it's like independent of reason. For us to say abortion is abortion, we would need abortion to be abortion. That's like the reason. That's a tautology. The reason abortion is that it's a tautology. Denying that would deny it's a tautology, which is just a fucking contradiction. If you're denying a tautology, that just makes you fucking stupid, which Infinity was clearly doing in that debate, from what I remember. And that's even more retarded, bro. Like, I don't know how you can sit there and hold to that. Denying a tautology, unless you can sit there and say abortion is not abortion, which is um, yeah, you know what? I'm not even gonna get into that point because like there's several inference rules which just go against that in terms of formal semantics. But like I don't know how Tron thinks Infinity is above him, bro. I've seen like people say Tron thinks Infinity is above him. I don't think Infinity is above Tron. I think Tron's above Infinity. I have Tron at high tier 4. I actually have Exility above Tron. I'm not gonna lie because just like in terms of substance and like argumentative format and knowledge wise in that application, I think Tron has bad tracking, but knowledge wise, isn't that like I think rhetoric wise he's pretty good, but more so, yeah, I actually do agree he's more rhetorical than Infinity in terms of like when reviewing substance and everything. The virtual examination just allows me to conclude that like it's not hard to say that, especially when I can conclude that based off debates I've seen. I've seen the Apollo debate, and he was pretty fancy with his rhetoric within his argument for God, which I actually made a debunk towards that on my another like video on my channel. But like again, like when talking about fiction debaters, again, these are all examples of fictional debaters who grew from crossovers and then moved to philosophical topics to try and fit in with the community. And he said that analytical truths can come from experience. I'm not even gonna lie, that's a synthetical truth that just reducts the whole point. I don't know what he was thinking there. He said God is instead of all contingent things. He's denied a tautology, and I don't know what else to say for Infinity specifically, but that's a example of somebody who would be like, I don't know, tier 6, tier 5, based off those performances. But I mean, if you grant him the benefit of doubt, there was a time where he like did clash with Goons. I don't know what Goons was doing, but apparently people were agreeing with him winning. I don't know though if that was Glaze, because like I didn't watch the debate fully, but like if I did grant him that performance, that only slightly moves him above in terms of, like knowledge wise and like rhetoric wise. If he's capable of doing that, doesn't exactly move him where Goons is, because I could just list that off as a bad performance for Goons. But that doesn't take away Goons' other feats of knowledge and everything. It's just well, Infinity has better performances, which I can like strictly place him like tier 4. So tier 4 on a good day, maybe. Um, that's where your fiction debater would lie, and that's the same thing with Warrior. Warrior is he himself, and so all I'm saying is that the problem, like specifically where I'm getting at, is like the fiction debaters have no actual knowledge. They make retarded statements, and I think they should just stop debating philosophy until they actually read something worth noting, and then actually get the knowledge to actually progressively, well, actually seem good. You have knowledge, this and that. Actually able to convey competent statements. That's kind of my view on that. But obviously, fiction debaters within the philosophy comm, like theology and etc. Well, you don't necessarily count theology as like philosophy, but it's definitely derived from philosophical things. It's pretty synonymous with that in terms of conception. Very similar. What else? What else? What else? Oh yeah, another example. Would be Dodd. Dodd is very surprising on this list because I've seen some of his arguments. It's not bad, but he grew from the SCD comm, and well, SCD in terms of philosophy is not good. I mean, you look at Noism, he's pretty retarded. He thinks you can hold to brute contingencies under theism or just theistic context when that implies PSR. You can deny PSR, but that takes away the specific thing about that. That was within my debate with him when I said, oh yeah, I was explaining a hypothetical under a theistic perspective. And he said, oh no, so because like brute contingencies exist, they can actually be made logically conceivable. First of all, that's just going circular saying, oh yeah, it's logically conceivable. And like, yeah, there was no actual substance behind that statement. And like, yeah, he did a pretty bad performance. Like, I beat the fuck out of the dude. He's not good. He's not tier 2. But, specifically when analyzing something like that, like debates and everything, you gotta make sure you have good knowledge and capability to do that. Not actually being retarded. Like, say for example would be Secret in his abortion debate with Lane. If a baby can explode and kill the universe, if a baby can explode and kill the universe, there's no way that's an abortion argument where it's called a logical possibility, bro. Abortion deals with specific things within the real world. That's what we know about our world, not other possible worlds in which ontological economy debunks. That's like, I'm not saying Secret's bad or anything, or like, specifically his statements about, like abortion, this and that, but like, it's very clear that's on the level of a fiction debater in terms of that topic, and that's ethics. Like, basically just the studying, like, debating things of like ethical propositions or just ethical theories. But yeah, that's not a ethical theory. That's more so metaphysical, like modality. But like, yeah. But these were just some examples and why I think the fiction community or just fiction debaters from the past need to get the fuck out of like the philosophy comm. Anyways, see ya. Love you.